The greatest leaders in business look for the emerging stories in their organization and use the data to choose their preferred outcome. What outcome do you want in your business? Listen to the stories of industry veterans, coaches, and consultants so you can choose your preferred business outcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. If you're new or returning, thank you for joining us. But I want to give you a quick background for those who are new to understand where this whole Business Blind Spot Exposed podcast started from. And it really kind of started from a personal journey. I used to believe I could be the smartest guy in the world by just reading and learning. But at some point in time, I can't learn at the velocity that many others learn because I learn my area, they learn their area. So I can't keep up with 50 people. So how could I amplify myself to learn faster? And I realized I have a lot of blind spots, areas that I just don't understand. And the number of blind spots I have are directly correlated to how effective and efficient I am as a leader. So the idea is, let me go make friends. Let me make acquaintances with the coaches, the leaders, the people who've been there and done that, who can not only teach me, but I can also tell them what I have. And it becomes a collaborative relationship. So I become more effective. And that's what this podcast is all about. And today I have with me, who can start to give me a little enlightenment in the podcasting world and open up another blind spot for me, Kay Suthar. Kay, how are you doing today?
Oh my goodness, I am doing awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about this because this whole podcasting space has grown so much. I think I read one of your, I think I read one of your emails that says there are over 2 million podcasts now or some significant number.
Yes, exactly. And it's just growing faster, every single day. It's just getting bigger and bigger. And it's funny because I guess before the pandemic, people were aware of podcasting, but not many people did it. And all of a sudden, the pandemic has pushed people to promote their business on podcasts because everything was on lockdown. There was no other way, right? And so that became a popular thing to do for people to promote their business, their services, bring awareness. And so it's just allowed podcasting to just, develop at a speed of lightning.
So I want to, for everyone who's listening in today, we're going to be talking about podcasts today and kind of all the plethora of options that podcasting bring. But let me do a little bit of housekeeping. I want you to comment, right? If you have thoughts, if you have questions, you disagree, you agree, feel free to write something in the comments, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn or on YouTube that you see us, any one of those platforms. Feel free to comment, and I'll either direct you to Kay in the future if you'd like to get connected with her, or I'll answer it if it's something that I'm capable of. By the way, you'll get a response. Number two, we have got a couple of episodes that are coming up after this, and I want to tell you the next two that are coming up on December 20. Today's December 28th. On January 30th, I have Tim Merrick. Tim Merrick is coming in to talk about empathy and compassion. Why should you care? Gosh, a lot of people talk about these words, and for myself, it's been a little bit of a journey. Empathy and compassion are two different words, and they mean two different things. And discerning between words makes so much more power and intention in how you use them and how you use them effectively. Tim's going to spend some time talking about that. I really think that's a really interesting conversation coming up. On January 4th, I've got Jim Conti. Jim's going to come in and talk about the biggest blocker to your success lies inside. As a 20-year-old, I used to think, kind of like before I had this podcast, I used to think it was how fast I could absorb information. Then I realized after a little while, I started getting a little smarter and realized it's not about how fast and how smart I was. It was actually those self-limiting beliefs that actually held me from going to the next level. And that's been the last 20 years, trying to figure out what those self-limiting beliefs are and what's holding me back from doing and being more effective. That's what we're going to talk about with Jim on January 4th. But today, Kay, focus on intention as a business leader. That's the topic. We're going to be spending time around podcasts. Now, I want to give you a quick snapshot because I'm kind of getting tired of myself talking here. I want to give you a quick snapshot of why I invited Kay. So She is in the podcast editing industry, right? And the basic idea that I got of when talking to Kay and understanding a little bit of what Kay does is there's a lot of people kind of go into podcasts thinking, oh, I'll just talk and I'll speak. And there's actually a lot of science to getting a podcast to be very effective. A lot of people are focused always on efficient numbers. Numbers are good, right? But being able to resonate with your audience makes a lot of sense as well, right? It's better to have 1,000 people that can't wait to hear you as opposed to 10,000 people who kind of check in every now and then, right? At least in my opinion. Mm. Details, so the details need to be updated near to the time of how you do it, why you do it, and what's your intention and purpose. There's lots of podcast coaching programs out there. Kay has got slightly a unique approach, and I think we'll get into that a little bit. And the underlying issue that I think I heard from Kay was this idea of editing. People spend a lot of time doing the podcast, but the editing on the back end is really where a lot of the magic is left out. I want to kind of stop there because I think there's so much more I could say about Kay. Did I do some justice to kind of why you approach this whole podcasting industry?
Oh my God, you did an amazing thing there. Oh, that was spot on. Thank you so much, Vinay.
Good.
But I mean, yeah, there is so much to, podcasting and editing. And it wasn't until I was going through the journey myself and I kind of found certain obstacles, in doing editing and, repurposing your content and, doing graphics, promotional materials. And it takes a lot of time, Vinny. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of time to do this for every single one of your episodes, especially if you've got, one episode a week being released, or some people have 2-3 episodes a week being released. That's all you're ever doing. And so I didn't want to get stuck in that kind of environment where all I'm doing editing and creating content and, doing these promotional materials. And when I was talking to other people, I found that they're doing the same thing. And what's happening is they're just running themselves dry. And they do it for a little while, but because it's so much to take on, they stop doing their episodes. They give up on their podcast. So I kind of decided, well, why not start a podcast editing agency? Now, there's so many different agencies out there that, do editing for commercials, for, landing pages, for all sorts of different videos. But I wanted to focus just on podcasts because podcast is huge right now and it's growing so much. And so what I have done is created a podcast that helps people launch their podcast and helps with the editing. So what that means is all you have to do is send us your content and we will take on the headache. We will do the editing. We will create the graphics for you. And all you'll have to do is send us the content and then we'll distribute it for you, put it up, wherever you wanted it to go, whether it's YouTube or, whether it's a particular host, we'll do all that for you. We can take care of it. So then you can focus on your genius, right? And I think that is the most important part of it is if you're going to be starting a podcast, you want to be able to focus on your genius and you don't want your time to be taken elsewhere. Because the minute that's done, you do that, then you're going to start getting bored. You're not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be fun. And the way I see it, business should be enjoyable, right? It should be enjoyable. So if there's something you don't like doing, then we need to take a look at it. And outsourcing is the best thing, right? And so that was the reason why I started an editing agency. And then it's just getting bigger and bigger because now all of a sudden people are like, I want to get on podcasts, but they're either struggling to get on podcasts or they're struggling to get on the right podcast that has their targeted audience, And so now there's also a program where I'm actually coaching people on how to do this the right way, how to get people's attention, how to get podcasters to ask you to come back on their, on their episodes and their podcasts. And whilst I was doing, I remember when I first started, Vinay, nobody would book me to get me on their podcast. They kept saying no. And the worst thing is that it wasn't these rejections that were so bad. It was the people that I just wasn't hearing from. It was like tumbleweed. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? Why are people completely ignoring me, not wanting me on their podcast. And so I had to then strategize, try different approaches, different tactics. And then it took me about 2 months. And then all of a sudden, Vinay, I got booked on 100 podcasts in 60 days. Right. And I was like, holy crap, what is going on here? This is freaking awesome. And so when people started hearing about how I managed to do this, they were now asking me, how are you getting yourself booked? And so at that point, I was like, okay, I need to teach people this strategy because this works. And the number one thing is to learn when people ask you to go on their podcast, right? Like, for example, like you did, it has nothing at all to do with me, but everything to do with your audience, right? And that's what people need to realize. And so I guess getting off of that pride and that ego that seems to be going around, the biggest, deadliest disease, right? You need to be humble and realize that it's not about you at all. It's about what you bring to the podcaster's audience, the value that you bring, the information that you bring, the golden nuggets. It's all about them 100%. And the minute you realize that, that's when you get to ask the right questions. Okay. So you're asking questions like, what are currently your audience struggling with? What is it that they need help with? What are their obstacles? What are their frustrations? What is the best way that you can serve that particular audience? And the minute you change that tone and that strategy, that's when podcasts are going to be like, holy crap, okay, she's all about us. It's nothing about her. And then they want to know more about you. That's the first step to kind of getting people's attention, and getting that first step in them wanting to speak to you a little bit more, and then getting booked in for these different podcasts that you want to be on.
So I want to stop for a moment and kind of back up, because I think there's there's probably a lot of layers of understanding.
Yes.
And having been a good, I don't know, a few hundred episodes. I don't know if I'm at a few hundred, but I'm 100 plus episodes in. Where I was in the beginning and where I am now are two completely different places.
Yeah, right.
As in with any career, where you start and where you end are not, you're not learning the same thing throughout the whole process.
Right.
Let's kind of maybe start a little more foundationally, because, I've got people who are going to be listening to this. They're going to be owners of businesses. They're going to be senior leaders. And I think people, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts a couple of years ago. And I used to always think that podcasting was only about learning, but actually it is, but learning in lots of different ways. Before, for me, it was only self-help type things or self-improvement. But
Right.
podcasting doesn't have to be just self-improvement or self-help kind of stuff. What are all the ranges of things that podcasters can do? What are the topics that they can address?
Oh my goodness, Vinay, that's endless, right? You can talk about all sorts. There's all sorts of podcasts out there that talk about different topics. It doesn't just have to be about business. It doesn't have to be about self-development. I've seen things where, people are talking about pets, how to take care of their pets. Parenting is a huge one as well, oh my goodness. Even like music, people get educated on music. The range is endless. It's unlimitless. Let's say that it's unlimitless. You can talk about any topic as long as it does have some sort of value, and people can learn from you. It's got to be some sort of education, I would say, that you're teaching someone about something, and that there is a market for it. People want to learn how to do this, or they want to know more about it. But the topics are endless.
So since the audience that usually listens to this tend to be business leaders, let's kind of drill down into this and kind of maybe even do a little bit of, I don't want to say role play, but sort of scenario building here, so people can kind of see how they can kind of go from, I don't want to do something, but where do I get to so I can do something, right? I want from this feeling to sort of an execution, right? So let's say I'm the leader of a company. I've got, let's say, I don't know, 35 people working for me.
Okay.
The challenge is when I get to about 35 people, um, it's getting to the point where I can't see all of my people anymore. Right.
Right.
So I can see being able to tell them what's happening. I'm going to throw out a couple of ideas and maybe you pick one and tell me how we develop it. Right.
Okay.
So I could do one thing where I start talking about what we're doing as a company, right? Just constantly, it could be a really short, 5 to 10 minute every week. I'm just simply saying, let me tell you what happened this week and kind of what we're doing, some of our big wins. That could be one thing, right? It could be someone in middle management who does a lot of training, someone who has some tech. I mean, it could be technical, it could be procedural. Does that make sense? I mean, those could be podcasts just internal to a company, but you could also use it externally too, right?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, you know, if you're in business and you're senior management, I mean, you can totally turn a podcast into training for your staff internally, right? For different things. And you can have it for different departments. You can even have Q&A sessions, right? So you can have a podcast out there, say you're training on, I don't know, a new software that the company has brought in. And so you want to do a podcast around it. You can bring a guest in that, that's part of this software that's either built it or working for this company externally, and to get training from there. You can do it yourself. You can even have Q&A sessions to see what people feedback on the software itself, where people are struggling. And when you start asking questions, when you start asking your team members, your staff, what they feel like is working in this software, what isn't working, that's when you'll realize, okay, we need to do training on X, Y, and Z, because this is where a lot of people are struggling. But the key thing is when you're doing something like that, ask your audience, ask your team members, what's going on? Where can we help? How can we serve? Right? There's no point in being someone that's just going to sit there in your own mind thinking, oh, maybe I should do this, and maybe I should do, training on this, and maybe I should do. Well, get out of your own head. Right? Stop trying to work out what people want and ask people what they want. That's the most easiest way to do it. And that way, the information you're giving people is going to be listened to, because this is what people need to hear.
So this is really interesting. I mean, I hadn't even thought of some of this stuff. I mean, just like internally to a company, if you want to do something where once a week you bring in another, employee or another manager, a customer, for example, right? Just have them come sit in the office and say, look, I've got 5 questions that I would like to ask you today. Every week you give someone in the company an opportunity to, the words that were popping through my head is, a lot of people are talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What better way to approach that topic by getting people whose voices haven't been heard on a topic every week?
Yeah, right? Yeah, most definitely. Everyone comes with a different perspective, right? So why not put it out there? Why not include these different perspectives? No one's wrong. Right? What people need to realize, no one is wrong. It's just a different perspective on things. And what you will find is the minute people realize that they have a voice, that they've been heard, the more, included people are going to feel, the more they're going to realize, okay, I don't have to be afraid. I can speak out. That will bring the team closer together. That will bring the business a lot tighter in processes and things that's going on. It's going to be more of a family feel, right? You want everybody to be included. You want people to realize that they do have a voice. And, this is great for senior management, because as the team gets bigger, the senior managers don't always realize what's going on. They don't have the eyes on what's going on, right, with what their team are dealing with. So why not allow your team who are on the floor, who are doing the work, to have a voice? So then that way senior management can take on board what's coming back to them, feedback, and make improvements where needed.
So this is, every time I think about this concept, there's so many more dimensions to it. Gosh, I mean, if you're working in an organization of 35 and your people out in the field all the time and you don't get a chance to see them, gosh, what better way to just continually just sort of check in with them, right? That's one option. But if you work with a company with 35,000 people, my gosh, even all the more reason for them to just get that familiarity of hearing your voice. And it doesn't always have to be about selling them something. It doesn't have to be always getting them to do things. I mean, it could be just education. I just talked with one of our customers today, and here's a couple of pieces of feedback I got from them in terms of how we were doing, right? I asked them, give me a number from 1 to 10, 10 being fantastic, and they gave me a 7. I asked them why. And it could be just a 15-minute conversation, just sort of a dialogue or a monologue as to how that conversation went and the thought processes, so other people can start to see how you think and maybe get themselves aligned. I mean, biggest challenge in lots of companies is clarity and congruence with what the mission is. So a podcast could be used for that purpose as well, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Do you know what? I remember when I was in a 9 to 5 job, the biggest issue that I heard from my team members was that, oh, you see all these senior management, all these execs walking past, going to their offices, like, they're probably just sitting in their Italian leather chairs and their huge tables in front of them. They don't really speak to any of their team. They don't say hello. Who are these people, right? They don't actually interact with the rest of the team in the company. And so what would be a good idea was to actually get them on podcast, get them on video, right? Speaking with their team to say, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is my background, and give people, I guess, an opportunity to ask questions to senior management, right? The more you do that, is the more humane you're going to look. You're not going to look like this robot that's just come out of nowhere that we don't know. People don't know who you do, what you do. And all you do is just shut orders out to people.
This is an excellent idea. I mean, if you really want to increase retention in your company, employee retention, what better way than allow them to send emails to you? And maybe you can even, a form, and it could be anonymous, right? Depending on what your intent is, but let them send you questions and say, hey, every week I'm going to take a look at the 3 questions, and the ones that are voted the most, I will kind of address them.
Yeah.
Look, that could build a whole tremendous amount of transparency in your company, and some people want that much transparency, right? Gosh, I just think if there's a couple of companies I'd worked for in the past, if there'd been a lot more transparency, I probably would have stuck around a lot longer.
Right, exactly. So it's endless what you can do.
So so we talked about this idea in terms of I'm talking in terms of foundation, building up sort of this idea. So we talked about this breadth of capabilities in terms of what you can do with a podcast, right?
Right.
Let's talk about form, and function, right? So, we talked about actually function. Let's talk about form. Does it have to, this podcast is something that I decided on. It's a longer form podcast, so we can go a little bit deeper and kind of wander through the forest a bit here. It doesn't have to be that free form. It can be very scripted if you want. It could be something that's 5-6 minutes long. Is that true?
Yeah, it can be as long or short as you want it to be. But again, the number one thing to keep in mind is the information, the value that you're trying to get across. Are you going to be able to get it across in 5 or 6 minutes? If you can, then fantastic, do it. If you feel that no, people need a little bit more longer time to get the information across and really sink in, then you need to think about the timing and maybe do it for a little bit longer.
Interesting. So it's not so much about the time, so much as the commitment to get the message across.
Exactly. That like I said right from the beginning, is about your audience. What do they need? It's not about what you need and what you can do, is what they need. Right. So again, if we go back to the senior management, I understand that senior management's time is limited, and they may not be able to give an hour, right? But you might not need an hour to get your message across. You might want to do it for half an hour. But if you're gonna put something like this in place, the number one thing that should be the forefront of your mind is, what do my audience need? What do my team need? Right? If they need half an hour of your time to make sure that the message is landed, then give them that. If they need half an hour, you can't give them that half an hour, then don't do it.
So let's break that down a little bit. I was once told that a good teacher is not the one who yells and screams when you are kind of going down this rabbit hole. They're the ones who can break it into smaller and smaller pieces, right? where you can say, all right, I can understand the small pieces. Now I can start to build back up, right? So
Yeah.
let's take that and drop it down. You're talking about this idea of being able to find out what it is that your audience needs. So let's take this example of, you want to build more transparency in your company. You want to build a better culture in your company. So you decide, I'm just going to make a guess here and say, we're going to do a 30-minute podcast once a week, right? I'm going to bring an employee in. Well, we'll select that in advance, and it could be at any level. And I'm going to have 3 or 4 canned questions that I'm going to ask up front that they'll see, right? What are you seeing? What's happening in the organization? If you could wave your magic wand, what would you change here, right? Something like that, right? And third, depending on the person, you could get through 30 minutes with 4 questions, probably.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it depends again on how much you want to expand on certain questions and different topics. But if you want to, get through 4 different questions, 4 different topics in 30 minutes, and 30 minutes is all that you can do, then make sure you keep to that, right? Do it for 30 minutes. But then also what you could do is offer out to your audience, if you have any questions or any concerns, then please email us on, and then give your email and see what kind of feedback you get from that particular episode of your podcast.
Yeah, this is really, really interesting idea. I mean, and hopefully anyone who's listening in, I'd love to hear your comments, thoughts as you hear this. I would love to see the ideas that are streaming or kind of swirling around in your head. I'm thinking, I've got a customer that I've been thinking about, and I've suggested this idea of a podcast because we're about to launch a new product for him, right?
Awesome.
And the idea is, so I'm kind of spitballing with a little of what you're sort of saying here, just maybe so everyone who's listening can kind of see this. I go to them and say, I'm going to start to bring you on board with this new product that we have that we're going to give to them. I suggest this thing, hey, why don't we meet? We're going to meet once a week anyway, just, 2 executives meeting, kind of checking in. I say, why don't we do this? Once every week, let's just record 10 to 15 minutes, kind of walking through this. What are you seeing, right? And I'm just asking the questions, everything. What are you seeing? What has changed since last week? How does that make you feel? Where did you want it to go? Now, all of a sudden, it is sort of memorialized, sort of his thought process. So he can send it to others and say, look, so I'd like you to listen to this podcast. We talked about this specific topic about 2 weeks ago. I think you ought to listen to it. It's 10 to 15 minutes as opposed to setting up a meeting. Now you've talked about amplifying your time as a senior exec in a company, right? He looks good because he's constantly reviewing this information. People can start to say, oh, I see how you're getting that. Now you stop in the hallway. It's not 15-minute conversation there. They already saw it. And they say, well, next time, can you talk through this a little bit more? It's actually sort of like an internal marketing campaign to some degree.
Yes. Yeah, it will definitely get people talking, and hopefully getting people at the senior management and the team that, at the bottom doing the work to kind of have some sort of communication, right? So there isn't a barrier, it breaks it down. And then there is a topic that both people, will be able to kind of discuss and see what comes out of it. And it's building relationships again, isn't it? So yeah, that would be a great opportunity for, people to come together from the different levels of, corporate world.
So I'm kind of thinking here and sort of building this, if you'll humor me more with this analogy. We've got this pyramid, we've built the base layer. You can have all these different topics, right?
Right.
Then the next layer sort of up is this idea that the format and the length really doesn't matter so much as long as it's just addressing the topic of your audience, right?
Correct. Yes. Making sure that it does actually give the value that people need to hear, right? And making sure that you are also talking about something that people are actually interested. If you're, I don't know, a corporate company that develops software, right? Maybe talking about how to take care of your pets isn't going to be something that really people care about, right? So, and then again, like I was saying, go ahead and ask your team, what is it that that they need to hear? What is it that they want to learn? What is it that's in their role that isn't working that we could possibly, figure something out and make it work? Even, if there is a particular software that they're using, but they don't feel like it's working to the best that it can, and they might even have feedback on that and say to you, well, why don't we use this software? I've done some research and it can do X, Y, and Z, and it can do it the fastest time. And guess what? It's actually cheaper. Right? So stop trying to figure out what your clients or your audience want, and just go ahead and ask them what they want.
So one of the things I want to bring up here, and this has sort of been my experience, and I'd love to hear, you've worked with a much broader base than I have. I have found that oftentimes when I invite people to my podcast, they feel like I've done them a solid, right?
Yeah.
As in, I've had potential customers, I've had partners, I've brought them onto my podcast and say, hey, why don't you come in? Let's have a conversation so that they can get their message out, right? I have an opportunity to ask them. People are very comfortable talking about themselves. If you have an internal podcast and you say, hey, to one of your customers, you've been a customer of ours for some time. I'd really love for you to come and share with us kind of what goes through your mind as you use our service. I mean, think in terms of sort of the emotional value of being able to hear one of your customers talk about what do they do? Why do they like you? Why do they choose you? Why do they stay with us as opposed to going somewhere else? I love Jack, right? I love Jack. Jack is the greatest person ever to come to my office and do whatever service for me.
Right.
Like, oh, well, great. I just learned something, right? There's so much you can learn by just bringing them into a podcast. It's also probably flattering for them to say that they've been on that podcast.
Yeah,
Is it that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, people love talking about themselves. And bringing in your clients, customers that have had a awesome experience with you, bringing them in on this podcast, and then getting your team to listen to what these outside people are saying about a company that you're a part of, and they wouldn't be able to do it without you, is also flattering to the team. And people get to hear, oh my God, this is what we're doing for people. This is how we're actually changing people's lives and their world. When you're on the inside of a company working away day in, day out, doing the same thing, you don't always hear what's going on the outside. Normally, it's just people in the front end or senior management, if it gets to that point, that hear, how it's actually affecting people. So that will actually raise, I guess, motivation and inspire the team, as well as realizing that, bringing these clients in and having them talk for your company, that this company actually cares about their customers. So you're hitting two birds with one stone, just doing that.
Yeah. So let's so again, building this pyramid, we've talked about the how, sort of the format and stuff, right? And kind of trying to get to that message. I mean, the equipment piece, I feel like, if anyone has any questions about equipment, I'm sure Kay will be more than happy to provide you lots of suggestions.
Most definitely.
I mean, I'm sure you got lots of recommendations, because I'll tell you, I mean, I got a little mic here and a little pop filter, and all that stuff together didn't cost me all that much money. It's relatively simple.
Yes.
I want to get to the editing part though, right? Because that's the part I think a lot of people are very leery of, as in, gosh, this is so complicated. And lots of times I know I find for myself, when I start to think about doing something I haven't done before, sort of there's going from this low energy state to this high energy state. I've got to do so much thinking, and I usually end up just kicking the can down the road. I think that's part of what you do is, right? Someone can get on, just record something. With a really high quality mic, maybe even just if you just do audio as opposed to video, right?
Right. Yeah.
Just get a good headset, record on your phone or something like that, and then send that to you, and then you can take that and bundle it up. What happens in that whole editing process? And can it be as simple as that?
Most definitely. And can I tell you a secret, Vinay, and your audience? I don't do editing. I've never done editing. Okay. I cannot stand editing. When I first started my podcast and I realized that, oh my God, there's a whole bunch of editing that needs to be done, the first thing I did was outsource. I found somebody that could do it for me because I didn't want to learn how to do it. I didn't want to know. I wanted to stick to my genius. Okay. And so I just found other people to do it. And so I found an editor. I found a copywriter, I found a graphic designer, and the list goes on. All of a sudden, I had my own team, right? All of a sudden, I'm able to now launch this agency that can do the stuff that I didn't want to do. And there's so many people out there in my position. In fact, I know that I've had conversations with people where they stopped doing or trying to launch a podcast because they didn't want to do any of that and they didn't know any other way around it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, well, there's so many people out there that want to do it, or they're doing it and they're sick and tired of doing the editing. Why not just start this agency? And so I already had a team of people doing the stuff for me. So I just kind of hired more people for different aspects of podcasting, and then just offered those services to other people. I was like, I already have the people here. Why not allow, other people to then take on these services, and also showing them that it's not just about getting that episode out there, but you got to promote it as well. There's a whole load of marketing that goes into it that people tend to forget. They just feel like they've put the episode out there and it's going to be watched and they're going to get 10,000 downloads and it's going to be awesome. It's going to make the money and that's it. But there's so much more that goes into it and you don't realize until you're in it. But outsourcing and getting it done, you don't need to learn how to do any of that. Hire the people that have been doing it for years, the professionals, get them to do it. That will save time and energy from you so you can actually focus on what you need to do. And that's creating the content, and building your own business, your own audience, and focusing on your own genius.
So let's dig into that for a second, right? Because I'm a numbers, I'm strongly analytical guy.
Right.
So when I've done the same thing, right? I have the luxury of having to have brought people on. You've been communicating with my team member Janine in terms of scheduling,
right?
Mm-hmm. I show up. That's really what happens, right? I show up to this. There's a little bit. She prepares a couple of things for me in post production. She does all of that for me,
right?
And what I'm hearing from you is, if someone wanted to start as simple as just answering, 3 questions from people that they send it, or if they just want to sit in their office and record with their phone with a high quality mic, that's the only thing I think I would recommend, is just make sure you have a good mic.
Right.
If they do that, then they can record that 15-minute conversation with that employee, if it's 15 minutes every week, for example, and they could send that to you. You could do the rest of it in terms of publishing it, putting it on a site, making it available to a private audience or a public audience. You could do all of that for them. So all they really have to do is just sit in that conversation with that person, and that the 3 minutes before and the 6 minutes afterwards, just saying, hey, is there any other questions we didn't answer here? And that's it.
Yeah, all they have to do is get that recording over to us, and then we handle the rest. We take the headache away from you and we deal with it. And then not only is it the editing that we do, but we'll do the show notes. We'll do the promotional graphics, because, repurposing your content is you got to do it. You've got content there, whether it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, you got content there. Let's repurpose it. So we'll actually repurpose it and make promotional material so you can actually start marketing and let people know that there's this episode that's going to be released soon. Because that's important as well. If you don't let people know what you're doing and what's going on, where to go, or any of that information, then how are people going to actually listen to your episodes in your podcast? You've got to let people know. And so we create so much out of just one recording. We take care of it, we distribute it. All you have to do is send us the content, and that's it.
The thing that I found that's really useful about my content is, now we've gotten, again, with just this Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast, I want to say we're about 60 episodes in all, an hour long, right? So there's lots and lots of rich content in there. Yeah. Right? The number of 30 to 90 second clips in there, let's say, per episode might be 15 to 30, depending on the topic.
Right.
And now I've got lots of that stuff is evergreen too, in terms of self-limiting beliefs, right? I've probably got, 12 episodes where I've got at least 3 different, clips that I can pull out. Where I'm going with this, and I would love to hear your thought on this, is that I've now built evergreen content that I can keep coming back to. I don't have to create every single time.
Mm-hmm. This is what I love about podcasting, right? Because people are all over, live events. You've got to speak at live events. But when you go speak at live events, the only audience you have are the people that are in the room, right? And then once you've done your talk, that's it. They don't hear it. Podcasting, as long as it's out there, it's evergreen. right? Regardless of whether they listen to it the day it was released, the day after, a year, 2 years down the line, as long as it's still out there, people continue listening to these episodes, which is freaking fantastic. I love that. And the fact that I guess people didn't realize that until podcasting really kind of hit out there for everyone during the pandemic is astonishing.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, most definitely it's out there forever. People are going to continue listening to it. People will go back to listen to it. And you can also, you know, if there's a topic that you're kind of speaking to somebody about, you can also say to them, you know what, I did a whole thing on this particular topic, you know, episode 19 or whatever it is. Go and check it out because there's a lot more information there. You can always refer back to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you now start to build a library of your own. So instead of, I mean, I always like to think of being a tech guy. Of all, automation has always been utilitarian. And if there's a 40-minute conversation that I had about a topic, I don't want to have 140-minute conversations. I'd rather have it one time.
Yes, exactly. You want to save that time as much as possible. And you know what the great thing is that podcasting doesn't just have to be audio, right? It can be audio and it can be video. And I love that fact because people nowadays want to see video. Right? I'm a visual person, right? I want to see a video. I want to see that person. I want to see them communicating. It helps me, you know, kind of relate to them a little bit more than just hearing a voice, right? I mean, if you just want to listen to audio, if you're, you know, at the gym and you're just there listening away, it's perfect. But why not also give people the opportunity to actually see you, to see how you communicate, the way you talk? Because people find, you know, you got to build that know, like, and trust. And that's the best way to do it on a virtual sense is videos.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, you know, I there's some people that I know that had started very early on in writing books, and now they're 5-6 books in. And you just think of that and you're like, wow, that's so incredible that they've written 5 or 6 books. I need to start doing that. They're already there, right? The snowball is already rolling down the hill.
Right.
If you want to create training videos, if you want to start to do culture building videos, you want to be able to build that know, like, and trust. I almost feel like, and I suspect you would agree with this, just kind of like Nike says, just do it, just start it, right?
Right.
So maybe here's the question for you. Does anybody get it right on the first try?
Oh my God, no. And if they say yes, they did, oh my God, I want to see that first episode, right? No one ever gets it right. It is a journey, just like everything else is in life and in business, right? You're only going to get better the more and more that you do it. There's so many different learning curves to it that people don't actually realize until you're in it. And there's so many ways that you can make improvements and make changes and, you know, add this and add that and add different segments. And even like having the different guests on your episode is different. Every episode is going to be different because you're going to have different style of speakers. You're going to have them talking about different topics. Some are going to be very analytical in numbers, and some are going to be very entertaining and comical. So every single episode is going to be different. The technical side of it is going to be something that you're going to gradually improve on. You're not going to get it perfect the first time, but then as you do get better and better, you're going to find that you're going to decide, oh, I want to upgrade the software I use. Oh, I want to upgrade the camera. I want to upgrade my lighting. And that just gradually happens as you keep doing it.
So, a couple of things that are coming, and my interest here is I'm trying to make sure. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed podcasting. I was not this comfortable when I first started it. Mm-hmm. I do like talking to people. That's about all I had. And I think what I wanted to make sure that people see here is that the barrier to entry is actually probably a lot lower than you expect. Just start. I mean, pick up your phone and just record a voice note and just start there, right? And then you can. Someone told me a long time ago, make it bad, then make it better, right?
Yes.
And then you kind of lower the expectations for yourself, and then you can start to improve 1% every day. So,
and I think people get stuck on the fact that oh, what if people don't listen to me? What if they don't like what, what I'm saying? What if they don't want to, listen to what I have to say? And we get into our own heads, right? And start making up all these stories about what people are going to say about us. Forget about what people are going to say about you. Just get up and do it, and then find out what people say about you and make improvements from there. And I remember the first time just doing a video, right? Like not just podcasts, just doing a video on Facebook. And people are very, especially the ladies out there, oh, got to do your hair, got to do your makeup, it's got to be on point. You got to put the right jewelry on. And I was kind of like, you know what? Screw this. I don't like putting makeup on. Makeup, the worst thing about putting makeup on, Vinay, is taking it all off, right? I don't want it. That's so much time. And so I just started getting up there and started doing these videos without any makeup on, right? However my hair was, and just kind of see what kind of reactions I got. And it was astonishing because the comments I was getting were like, how do you have the confidence to get up on video without any makeup on? Right? And I was like, wow, okay, there's a huge issue in regards to confidence and building confidence, just generally in life, let alone business. And the fact that people don't want to get up on video because they feel like they're going to be judged. And so the number one thing is like, just screw whatever people are you think that people are going to say. Just get up and do it, because you're never going to realize what kind of perspective people have on you just because you've done something differently. And so if you want to start doing podcasts and you want to do videos, or you're not sure you want to do videos because, you need to make sure your hair's on point, your makeup's on point, just get up and do it and see what kind of reactions you get from the audience. Because although you're thinking it's going to be a negative one, it could most definitely be a positive one.
I will tell you, I had to go to a family member's wedding in October.
Okay.
It was an outdoor wedding. It was beautiful outside, and we were all getting set up. And I was part of the wedding, and Indian wedding, so I had to do some for the Hindu section of it. They wanted somebody to do the announcing, and they asked me to do it. As I'm standing there, waiting in front, waiting for everyone, a couple of family members, extended family members, came up to me, and one of the guys puts his arm around my shoulder. He's Vinay, I've been listening to your podcast. I was like, wait, what? He said, yeah, do you remember that episode when you talked to this guy about that topic? That really resonated with me. And after I started to hear that, I think I've listened to every single podcast since then. Wow. And my jaw about hit the floor. I said, wait, someone's listening? And the funny thing is, for the longest time, I was in my own head thinking that, I'm saying this stuff, it seems so normal to me. Am I really saying something of value? When I started hearing from it, really cemented it. That was, I think, the first time I heard it. And it seems like after that, I started saying, I'm saying something of value. It just started happening every week. Someone come to me and say, Vin, I've been listening to your podcast, and everyone gets different nuggets out of it.
Yeah.
That I hadn't expected. I didn't think that was anything profound. And they're like, oh, I changed how I run my day because of what you said. And I was like, wow, thank you.
Yeah.
It is that simple, right?
It is that simple. I mean, you got to keep doing it. You got to be in it for the long run, right? If you're going to start podcasting. And things aren't going to happen overnight. You've got to be patient with it. But then when you do carry on in time, you're going to get these, how should I say it, spies, right? That you don't realize that are listening to you, are following you. And then eventually months will go down and, they'll come across you and they'll tell you that they've been listening to your podcast and, it's changed their life. But that doesn't happen overnight. You got to keep going and giving that content before people start approaching you and telling you what kind of changes and differences made in their life.
Yeah. So we've spent a fair bit of time here, and I want to kind of do a little bit of recap because I want to get you to kind of give me some places for people to start. So I want to come back and revisit this pyramid. The first thing is this idea of you can use podcasting for anything, for exposure, for visibility, for relationship building, for culture building, diversity, equity, and inclusion, really whatever you want. And feel free to rewind in this podcast to find out all those ideas. But when you build on top of that, it's all about the audience, who you're serving, that you need to be cognizant of. That really dictates the format and the time. And you can start it with something as simple as just picking up your phone and just starting to record into it hopefully with a good microphone. So it's actually relatively simple. Just start bad, get better. So, Kay, if someone wants to start podcasting and if they want to do the editing part, you can take all of that headache. I mean, that's exactly what you do.
Yeah.
If someone wants to get started, give me, 1, 2, 3 steps. Where should someone get started? I mean, they're saying, I've been sitting on the edge of this until I'd heard this podcast or heard this conversation. I never thought of using it for internal training or culture. Give me 3 steps that someone should follow to get started, and maybe reach out to you if when they're ready and they need to get going well, right?
Okay. All right. Well, if they want to start their own podcast, first thing I would suggest is that they know what the end result is, right? They know what topics they want to talk about, and also deciding whether is it going to be you that's going to be talking on every single one of these episodes, or are you going to get guests? If you're going to get guests, then you need to then start making a list of who could be potential guests. Okay, because then you do need to reach out to them. You do need to put a little bit of time in preparing, making sure that your calendars match and that they do want to get on a podcast with you, and that there is a time that you can actually do a recording. Once you've decided that, then you've got to decide, how often do you want to release a podcast? Do you want to do it once a week? Do you want to do it twice a week? Is it once a month? How do you want to start off, right? You don't need to have it all, I guess, concrete plan right from the beginning. You might want to do it once a month to begin with to see how it goes. If this is something that you want to do long term, or is this something that you're just going to try out, you don't like it, then you can just give it up if you want. But you got to be clear as to when you start doing this and you take it seriously, you've got to stay consistent. Consistency is key. Okay. So once you've got your topic, then you've got to realize, okay, how am I going to do this? Is it going to be all me? Is it going to be guests? And then also, how consistent are you going to be? Is it going to be once a month? Is it going to be twice a month, once a week? And then also, what is your end goal for this? What are you, by you trying to launch a podcast, what are you trying to do for people? How is this going to help people? Right? Is this something that people need to hear and need to know about? Is there a market for it? So these are the kinds of questions you need to be asking yourself when you want to start a podcast.
So let me recite that back to you. Just kind of, I'm always writing notes down here. So number one, start with the end in mind, right? I mean, I've heard that so many different ways, right? End in mind. Next, you got to think about who's talking, you or the guests, and it could be a combination, right?
That's right.
But you need to decide that. Next is sort of how often do you want to do this? I think consistency is probably the most important thing that I heard there. Most you can do it monthly if you want. You can do it daily if you want. You just need to make sure you do that.
That's right. Yes.
And I think number 4 is really kind of just refine via the end game. So if you know what that end in mind, kind of start doing it and then realize I'm going to have to come back and revisit, because when I first started this Business Blind podcast, it was all over the place in terms of what it was. And over time, we just started to narrow. And it has become this thing where it was all the stuff that I didn't know that was really interesting to me, because I just love to learn. I love to constantly be exposed. And it's easy for me to get into it because I'm getting something out of every time. But I start to find other people get some value out of it as well.
Exactly.
Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Definitely on point. But, just going back on consistency as well, if you're decided that you're going to release it on Tuesday at 7 p.m., or whatever time, then make sure that you do that every single week. Do not change your days, do not change your times, because your audience do like consistency. And if you keep changing, swapping your times, they're going to miss your episodes when it's released. They don't know what's going on. They most likely won't come back. So people like consistency. Make sure you stick with the same time, the same day, so people know where to go, what time to go when your episodes are released.
Yeah, I mean, if the quick analogy there is, I think a lot of people have watched this show called Game of Thrones. If every week it was on at a different time, it started at 2:00 one day and 11 p.m. one day, they wouldn't get through nine seasons.
No, exactly. And so consistency definitely is key, and making sure you're on point with days and times when you want to release is something that needs to be looked at.
Well, for anyone who listened in, I hope you got some real value out of this. I know I got a couple of nuggets here from Kay. So thank you for listening, and feel free to comment if there's any thoughts, questions. I'll be more than happy to put you in touch with Kay if if you're not able to get in touch with her yourself, I'm more than happy to get you in touch with her. So thank you for listening. But Kay, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Before we go, is it okay if I give your audience a gift?
Please do.
Yeah, awesome. So if you are either, looking to get on podcasts, not sure how to where to start, how to get booking, where to reach people, then if you go to getmebookedonpodcast.com, you'll be able to find a cheat sheet that will give you the steps on what you need to be looking at, where to start, and the processes and the steps to follow through there. And that will get you the first steps to getting, reaching out to people and getting booked on podcasts. If you want to learn more, then please visit my website at makeyourmarkagency.com, because when you're on podcast, that's exactly what you're doing. You're making your mark to the world. Take a look on there. There's a lot more information there. If you want to get on a call, then just click on book a call with me on the website, and I'll be happy to have a further discussion with you.
So let me make sure I get this for everyone. So getmebookedonpodcast.com.
Getbookedonpodcast.com.
Get booked on podcast.com. And that's the process that you use to do that, if they want to learn how to do that, right?
Correct. Yes.
And if they want to get in touch with you directly, feel free to comment, but also go directly to makeyourmarkagency.com, where they can get in touch with you and get a consultation with you, and you can kind of walk them through that whole process.
Exactly.
And if you want to get the editing, which I will tell you, I also hate the editing. It is a very tedious process. Please reach out to Kay. She can help you with that. It takes a lot of hassle out of having someone else do that. Okay, thank you so much for offering that and spending so much time giving us insights as to how to do podcasting better.
No worries. Thank you for having me on here, Vinay.
Absolutely.